Hey, we're going to be talking about a new program that has been announced by the federal government. And let's see, that's the one. A new program that has been announced by the White House this week. It's called U.S. Cyber Trust Mark. And you see this little diagram off to the right-hand side. This is trademarked. This is trademarked and copyrighted, just so you know. So this is the Cyber Trust Mark. I'm going to do a slide presentation. I hope everybody enjoys it. I spent a little time working on it this week. As you can see, that Cyber Trust Mark is copyrighted. In other words, you're not supposed to copy and paste it like I just did into the slide presentation without acknowledging that it's copyrighted. The Department of Homeland Security, I believe, if not, it's FCC, owns the copyright for that mark. Okay, so let's talk about it. Has anybody heard about it? I mean, they've had it out for comment for a long time. I believe the last time they discussed it publicly was 7 months ago. But they just announced it. You know, we're trying to finish up things with the White House before Joe Biden goes away, which, okay, let's get some things done. This was one of them. So, according to the White House, this will provide American consumers a label that can be put on devices that they bring into their house. I don't have anything real good to point out here, but if you have something that's on the internet, an IoT device, this is what it's designed to address. So devices that are included are wireless, interconnected smart products. And, you know, according to the White House, from baby monitors to security systems. Sounds pretty comprehensive, but if you notice down at the bottom left, there are numerous exceptions. And I'll show you some of those, the way they described them. So they wanted to make sure that this thing would give American consumers some education in the form of, this is Cyber Trust Mark certified, this is not. That's all it is. It allows a consumer to be able to say, oh, I'll use my flashlight as an example. It doesn't connect to the internet, but you know, you pull up something and say, does it have, you know, cute little marks? This has a couple marks on it. One says CE. Well, CE means something. Well, there would be a Cyber Trust Mark also if this were certified. So you could be looking at a number of things. Let's say you wanted to look at security cameras. You could see these. These are marked, Cyber Trust Mark. These are not. You can't say that something that's not marked is not secure, but you can say that something with the cyber mark has at least some basic cybersecurity protections to it. And I'll show you what some of those are. So the point of this also is to try and encourage companies to go through this certification process so that they can put this mark on their devices. All right? Does anybody have an idea about what this sounds like? It's based on a program that has been very effective in the U.S. over the last 15, 20 years. Remember? Anybody? Have you heard of Energy Star? Energy Star appliances or Energy Star houses. That's another program that this is designed to look like. Okay, but it's not energy, it's cybersecurity. Okay? Federal government, this is from the FCC, they're saying that just like Energy Star, our program will pave the way for more secure products. Energy Star showed that certain appliances or capabilities. You could literally get a whole house certified. Shows that it is an energy efficient home. This, once it is implemented, will show devices that at least have minimum cybersecurity protections. Okay? And again, that mark is copyrighted. Make sure everybody remembers that. So there are 3 basic steps to get this mark. Number 1, you evaluate your specific item. And I just gave it, false name here. Cyber Baby Monitor, Model 2000, against the NIST guideline. Now, down at the bottom, you notice if you have a Model 1000 and a Model 3000 to go with your Model 2000, if you put the Model 2000 in to be evaluated, that does not cover the 1000 or the 3000. Every single model that you plan to put that mark on must be evaluated separately. Somebody who's thinking bottom line is already saying there's a cost involved. And there's a time involved in this, because what if you're planning on putting something out on the market, but this stuff needs to be stamped on it before you put it on the market? So it has to go through the whole process of certification and receive approval before you can tell your manufacturers to start stamping those things on the item. So there's some, we'll talk about it, but there's some risks to this. So number 1, you review it based on the NIST standards. Number 2, you submit it for testing. There are going to be lab testing capabilities. I think they've already identified 11 organizations that function as administrators for this program. And they're going to be the people that you would send your device into and say, I believe it meets all this criteria, and they're going to test it too. That's number 2. And number 3, you get your approval back from the FCC that says you can put this mark on your device. Okay? And then down at the bottom, I said, rinse and repeat for every single device model you sell or plan to market in the United States. So I'm thinking, they didn't announce it in the announcement, but I'm thinking that their plan is to use IR 8259A, a NIST checklist called IoT Device Cybersecurity Capability Core Baseline. Big words. If you want to go out and take a look at it, it's a pretty easy to read. Just read the first the first column or two as you're going down, because it can get real deep. But this says basically, what does a device need to do or have in order to be considered to be cybersecurity? It meets a core baseline. So here are some of the things. I think there are 6. Number 1, it has to be uniquely identified logically and physically. That means that your, for example, baby monitor is going to have the equivalent to what we use today called a MAC address. Okay? Uniquely identifiable on the internet. Okay? Number 2, the software configuration can be changed and only by authorized entities. That means it has to support your baby monitor, has to support software upgrades and secure login and account management. See what I'm saying? Next one, it can protect the data it stores. In other words, it has to encrypt and provide protections against things like unauthorized access. Your baby monitor has to protect against unauthorized logins. And if somebody busts it open and puts it onto a workbench, they still can't get the data in it. So your baby monitor is going to have encryption. Next one, logical access. It can restrict logical access. In other words, it can say who can and who can't log in. And it could be things like, if you remember, we talked about geofencing and geo-blocking. Oh, if it comes in from an IP address in the, communist bloc of countries, can't come in. Maybe. And allows service to authorized entities only. That's your secure login and account management. Next one, software. Software can be updated, but only using a secure and configurable mechanism. That is your software update capability. And once it updates, it has to reboot. And once it reboots, it has to come up 100% of the time, because you are not going to be sending somebody to, Idaho to fix a security camera. It needs to be very durable. And I think this is the last one. The IoT device can report on its cybersecurity state and make that information accessible to authorized entities. So somebody could put it into your network monitoring capability. How is my fish tank thermometer? And it can say, I have all these things covered. Okay? Make sense? Those are just some of the things that I think are going to be expected in this cyber trust mark. It's not going to be easy for many of these organizations, because all they thought of before now, throw in a TCP/IP chip, sell it. The interface now has to go through some scrutiny. Can anybody think of possible risks? I sort of indicated a couple possible risks. Anybody want to share? Chris, go ahead.
I wonder how much of this is minimum bar versus the absolute highest security. You cannot say it's ultimately high secure, but on the lowest bar, are these the lowest bar standards to get this mark? Because if that's the lowest bar standards to get this mark, here's my application fee. I'm energy certified, but I'm only going to do the absolute bare minimum.
Right.
That's going to be there. And to me, that's a risk. To me, my personal risk.
Right. It is a baseline. So they are expected to get the cyber trust mark. You will have to be able to do the baseline, and like you said, everything that you do costs money. So the manufacturers are obviously only going to be doing the minimum necessary to get that cute little trademark or trust mark.
That's a knock on Energy Star is I can just give over whatever entity that gives the Energy Star the money, and they'll slap the Energy Star sticker right on it, and sooner or later you're showing, well, how much energy is it actually taking, how much it's actually doing, and you're like, that's not efficient at all. This guy over here is, for an extra $100, I can have a better efficiency kind of situation, but I'm not an expert on that one. People can probably tell me off here.
No, you got a point. Anyone else? Thank you, Chris. Anyone else? Okay, well, I thought through this, and I have some ideas for risks. In case you guys don't realize this, much of my career has been focused on risk management. Whenever I was in an organization, well, since around the year 2000, I was the person that did the risk management for whatever organization we were in or supporting. So risk management is just something that I do naturally. So let's talk about possible risks. Here's one. Anybody could slap the logo on their products and say, yes, we are Cyber Trust certified. They could. By doing that, they could get the rush of product out to market and maybe, get a good sales group going. But that puts the United States government in a position where they have to investigate, they have to take you to court, and they have to come up with penalties that from a business standpoint, you may just say, okay, we'll look at that when it arrives or something. Or it could be an overseas company that you can't take to court. The worst that could happen is they could do like a TikTok and say, all right, you can't use this anymore in this country. After you've sold, 20 million units or something, you're done. You're moving on to your next products. So that's one risk. Here's another one. The standards could change. Chris, you sort of lean toward this. The standards could change. We all know that cybersecurity is a steadily changing landscape. So what happens when they come up with these cybersecurity baseline amounts, you set your system, it goes through the whole certification process, you get the Cyber Trust mark on it, and then they say, and by the way, it has to be able to do this or not do this. You could end up having the Cyber Trust mark on your system that you sent all the way through, and now it's not Cyber Trust mark certified. Because they changed the goalposts. They moved the requirements to get that Cyber Trust mark. So I thought about it and said, well, probably what they may end up having to do is come up with Cyber Trust mark 1.0, Cyber Trust mark 2.0, Cyber Trust mark 3.0, so that you could say, oh yeah, I'm a Cyber Trust 1 certified. My security cameras are whatever, Cyber Trust mark certified 1. That could happen if they change the specifics necessary to get that trust mark. So that's another risk. You go through the whole process, and then the federal government says, oh, and by the way, you have to paint this purple or whatever. What? And you've already sold them, you've already, stamped them, you've already done everything you need to do, but then the standard changes. That's a possibility. Here's another one. What about, let's say I have a device and I don't have any, okay, well, I'm pulling this out. It's not the best example, but you've got you've got an internet connected camera. So I've got my Nexigo camera here. Internet connected camera, your security camera, and something breaks on it. And you need to go in and fix it, get it fixed. And the component that you put into it is not Cyber Trust mark certified. That could render this entire device not certified. So you've got a challenge. What if you have 1,000 of these and your mission was to provide camera services to, I don't know, a candy manufacturer, and you basically say, I can put replacement components in, but they're not certified, and it's going to take an extra 6 weeks to get certified components, what would you do? It's a question many people are going to be asking. How do I get back to being profitable? And how long is it going to take? Certified components? Non-certified components? I don't care. Get us back profitable. All right, thank you, Nerman. All right, so that's another possibility. And last, what if the whole certification process, which relies on the federal government, gets underfunded? We happen to run out of funding in the federal government closes. The whole process slows down, which affects your bottom line because you plan to roll out this brand new, 2025 baby monitor. And oh, by the way, you won't be able to roll it out until 2026. That could cause big issues. Make sense, everybody? So as we're looking at this, here are some of the exceptions. I wanted to go through these. If it's monitored and regulated by the FDA, it's not part of this program. So heart monitors, CPAPs, anything that's interconnected medical devices, not covered. NHTSA regulated motor vehicles and equipment. Your smart connections on your car aren't covered. How about this third one? Wired devices are not covered. I see a possible loophole. Do you? Anyone? What if a device is wired and wireless? What does it qualify for? You know? If it has a wire, can you say you don't qualify? That's a hard one to discuss. My printer has a USB connector and a Wi-Fi interface. So does it qualify for this cyber trust mark? Okay, next one. Products primarily used for manufacturing, industrial control, or enterprise applications. That is by definition IT and OT. So we're just talking IoT devices, Internet of Things devices. And then the last three are talking about if it's national security. If it's something that has been flagged, like TikTok is making its way to being in a status where you won't be able to have it. Why? Because there are risks involved in having it on your and using it. And they involve national security. It goes back to when the NSA toolkit was stolen from a contractor's computer at his house because he was running Kaspersky software. So Kaspersky got banned, you know, and so that's the sort of thing. TikTok, the same thing. It's got to reach back into the Chinese government. They swear up and down they don't, but their big thing is, oh, but it's helpful. Oh, but, you know, look at these. You've seen the commercials. Look at these nuns. They have this wonderful little TikTok channel. Oh, look at this lady who makes wax candles. You know, okay, but what if somebody's using TikTok for readiness for a electrical generation plant? TikTok, you cannot guarantee that the Chinese government's not going to walk in and say, give me this data. And because they are communist, they must respond. It's the communist ideology. So just a couple questions you need to ask. Is a program worth the time and effort? And do the benefits outweigh the risks? I don't have an answer. I think it's a good start. But again, with all of those risks that exist out there, it's a mark. And somebody can, just like I did, if you look at slide 1, bam, in fact, I'll do it. Slide 1, I went out on the internet and found the U.S. Cyber Trust Mark, copied it, brought it over, and said, there it is. Somebody could do that on their devices. How do you stop them from doing it? You say you can, investigate them and take them to court, but what if they've already sold, 100,000 units? They've already made their money. So just my thoughts on this. Anybody have any comments before I stop the recording?
I just want to say, I think the hard part for this one is how fluid technology is versus you're mentioning Energy Star. You know exactly what's in that energy setup and
right.
parameters. This, I think, is going to be really difficult, and it's layering a lot from a manufacturing perspective. And then falsely, maybe, like you said, being out there to where somebody's looking at it as a trust, but then it becomes untrustworthy.
Right. A major component needs a minor component. How far down does this trust mark go? Yep.
Okay. On the software side, what kind of software are we going to be talking about? Is it going to be the proprietary software that runs the IoT object? If there's components to that proprietary that does not belong to that group, let's say Apache or some open source software, does that do we have to, me as a manufacturer or the software developer, have to worry about that? Is there a software bill of materials? Is there, yeah, it goes along with what Ken's saying about the layers.
Right. I think you know that our contracting group and our acquisitions group have both specified certain things that must be incorporated into software app development projects or whatever. You know, if we're going to use this training platform, it has to support single sign-on. It has to support PKI, you know, those sorts of things. It's not just giving a service. There are going to be lots of specifications that could prevent you from selling your baby monitor to all of the Air Force base, military base nurseries. You know, all the child care centers that are on federal bases. What if you were able to sell to all of them this, you know, monstrous new baby monitor, only $29 or something like that, but it doesn't do these things, and the federal government says, hey, it's got to have the Cyber Trust mark, you're out. You are out. So, yeah, there's a lot to consider here, good and bad. It's a stab in the right direction. Is it going to be successful? We don't know. But it will at least provide something that a consumer can look at and say, is this something that could be trusted? Not saying, you know, is going to be safe, but could be trusted more so than the exact same device that hasn't been through the process. That's about all that they can do.
I also wonder how much we as security professionals or security practitioners or even security researchers we understand that, hey, the object is to reduce the risk of being hacked or being affected or having an incident, whereas the public is sitting there going, hey, I just don't want to be a victim. And I won't say perfect security, but is there any way you can actually prevent me or actually not have it happen? To me, it's just, as a security practitioner, it's more of a reduction versus a perfection.
Right. Yeah, it's a step in the right direction, but yeah.
I have a question. So I was saying that these, if when this get released, will be mandatory or only like for the companies that want to add it to their product?
Good question. Good question. And that goes down to the federal government can demand things that private industry can't. And this also is a consumer-focused trust mark. It's consumer-focused. So you're supposed to be able to say, you know, do I have the trust mark on, you know, this line of phones or whatever. You're right. The federal government, or let's say Maricopa Unified School District, could say you can't buy security cameras unless they have the Cyber Trust mark. You could. You know? So, of course, there's a problem with that because these things are going to take time and effort, which means it's going to increase the cost of the devices. So what happens when your baby monitor is now double the price of everybody else's? Yours is certified, but theirs aren't. You know, you have just raised the price of your device in order to get that trust mark certification. It's got to mean something to the consumer as well. So, you know, so they can look at it and say, yeah, I want that. Not just, I want what's cheapest. Good one, Anderson. Anyone else before I stop recording?
I think what you said is really true. If it goes through that process of needing to be purchased, whether it's the federal government You said it, any of the schools, all of them. You think of EpiPen, that was a perfect example when they mandated that every nursing office, have it for a certain length of time, and then they need a new one, that it spiked as far as the sales. This would be the same, in terms of credibility getting done in a rapid succession.
Right. EpiPen is a trademark,
Correct.
And if you say you got to have an EpiPen and you don't say or similar device, you got to buy from the more expensive folks. Why? Because that's what you specified.
And that's why I brought it up exactly like that. Correct.
Yep. Good point. Great. Anyone else? Well, I hope you enjoyed this. This was kind of fun to research. Let's look forward to it. Let's watch it because it was just announced this week. So there's bound to be more things coming up about it. I would say within the next year, we might start seeing products with the U.S. Cyber Trust mark on